Several high-profile Christians have deconstructed their faith, from Rhett and Link on the Good Mythical Morning Show to the Gungors, who are world famous for some of their songs, You Make Beautiful Things, John Steingard from Hawk Nelson, and plenty of others. If I left any out, please leave them in the comments. But what does it mean when we say that Christians are deconstructing? That's what we're going to talk about on this episode of Dealing with Deconstruction. Hello, doubters. Now, I can grant that there isn't just one definition of what it means to deconstruct. So I'm going to do my best to kind of describe some things that I think are common and see if they line up with your experience.
Deconstruction is not the same thing as destruction.
And if I missed anything, again, you can go ahead and leave it in the comments. Would love to hear from you.
Because I'm not just trying to burn the whole thing down.
A lot of the people that I see deconstructing have some of these things in common. One of them is that they possibly grew up evangelical Christian, or perhaps they've even grew up as a Roman Catholic.
Never could I have imagined back then that someday I would ever reach a point where I would no longer consider myself to be a follower of Jesus.
Part of my story is that I did grow up Roman Catholic for the first 12 years of my life before I started going to a Protestant church. When I was about 16, I kind of overlapped there for a few years. And I'll be honest, I haven't gone through the deconstruction process like some of you have, but I have asked big questions of my faith. And that leads us to a second point. People that are deconstructing are asking these just larger than life questions. Maybe that's you. Maybe you find yourself asking these big questions. And so part of deconstruction, as I understand it, is that you are asking big questions.
I majored in psychology with a minor in theology, and these two classes combined really challenged me to ask tough questions. My theology professors and philosophy professors especially always were trying to push students to rethink all of the right answers we've been told about God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit and salvation. So they were really the ones that pushed me to start looking at things in a different way and to ask, well, why do we believe this? Or why is this doctrine this way? Or
another possibility is that you have been hurt by the church. You're one of those that have grown up in the church. Maybe you ask questions, but maybe you were hurt by somebody. Maybe part of your story is that you were abused. Maybe you were spiritually abused. Maybe you were physically abused. Maybe you were sexually abused. And that could have started asking some of those questions. How can this be true when there is this hurt attached to it? Maybe you have some sort of legitimate, and again, there is legitimate and illegitimate PTSD, but maybe you have PTSD from being in churches and being hurt. Maybe that's you. Maybe you felt like God didn't answer your prayers while you were going through something difficult, whether that was that hurt or something else outside of that. Maybe you were going through a divorce. Maybe a loved one passed away. Maybe you were just dealing with physical pain or some kind of physical ailment, a disease, some kind of chronic issue.
But the relationship was a huge contributor to the state of my mental health. And so eventually I felt like I was forced to pick between God's plan for my life, God's pick for me, God's pick of spouse for me, or my mental health. And ultimately I chose my mental health.
And you cried out to God and you felt like God was not there. Maybe you felt like the church lied to you as you were growing up. Some of the things that they taught that you later found out weren't necessarily the case, or at least weren't as backed up as you thought they were. And that started your deconstruction process. And again, maybe I'm missing something here, and I would love for you to leave that in the comments where I might be missing something. Several of my friends have gone through a similar process for similar reasons. And one thing that I will say, being able to kind of see this and walk with them is that it can be lonely. Typically, you don't find out necessarily until way after the fact. People have these questions, or they've gone through this hurt and this pain, or they've cried out to God and they've not heard an answer, and they're saying, where is God? But they don't feel like they can share that with the people that are in their Christian community. They don't feel like they can share that with their Christian friends because they'll be looked down on, which leads to more pain. It can be painful to start asking some of these questions and walk through this. And so I want to say that I understand that sometimes it can feel like your world is closing in or collapsing around you as you start to go through this process.
Because I'm not just trying to burn the whole thing down.
I first want to say that if you are going through this process, I'm sorry for any pain or hurt or suffering that you have experienced. And I want you to know that you aren't alone. And a great place to start is to head on over to our Facebook group called Dealing with Deconstruction and join that Facebook group. The link is on the screen and it's also in the description. You can talk about what is going on and ask some of the questions that you have and share some of your experience. There are answers to your questions, would be something else that I'd want to say to you. You can find answers.
Like, what are the bones of my faith? What is holding it up?
And it does take a little bit of work, but I want to say that in my journey, the questions that I have had, based on some of my experiences, I have found answers to. Now, we will discuss several of those large questions, and we will discuss the answers to several of those large questions on this channel and upcoming videos. The next thing I will say is that God is not hidden, even though it might seem like it. It might seem like that God is hidden. It might seem like that God has not answered your prayers. And I can fully understand how you can say, well, if he's not hidden, then where is he? And I do want to point you to a video that I did with Dr. Jonathan McClatchy, where we talk about the divine hiddenness problem. The link is on the screen right up here, and the link is also in the description. That will come out in April of 2021, and I encourage you to check that out. Next, it's okay to doubt.
Taking it apart piece by piece to see what's really there.
People in the Bible doubted too. You had Thomas, who's well known for being the doubting Thomas. You had John the Baptist, who asked Jesus, are you the one we should be expecting, or is there somebody else? You are in good company with doubt. And I would invite you to check out the playlist on the screen right now from the 1 Minute Apologist, where he walks through a number of different types of doubt, and he walks through a number of stories in the scriptures about doubt, and hopefully that will help assuage you from some of that doubt and help you doubt towards faith. Lastly, if you're in this process, I would say that the two most important questions that you can answer are this: does God exist? And did Jesus walk out of the tomb? Let the answers to those questions be the cornerstone to the rest of your journey. If you answer yes to God existing, and you answer yes to Jesus walking out of the tomb, then a lot of other answers that you get to your questions can help guide you in that process. And let that, again, be the cornerstone. Let it be the guiding principle. God exists, and did Jesus walk out of the tomb? Now, if you can't answer yes to both of those questions, if those are some of the questions that you're seeking to answer and saying, man, I don't even know if God exists, and I don't know if Jesus walked out of the tomb or what that necessarily means, you are in good company, and there will be more videos on the channel right here that deal with God's existence and how we can know that to be true, and how we can know that Jesus walked out of the tomb. But I will say that there are a number of secondary issues other than those two questions that can cause us to doubt. And that's where I would say we need to be thinking about and be open-minded to the evidence that we get, or the questions that we have answered and how those are answered. But I will say that there are answers, as I have already mentioned. So I do want to point to those two questions being the most significant questions that if you're going through this process, I would start to try to answer those first. If you aren't going through this process yourself, but you're watching this video because you know someone that is in the process of deconstructing, I want to say this to you: spend time listening. Also, affirm the hurt and pain where there is hurt and pain. Next, just be a friend. Start being a friend right from the beginning. Know that it is okay to doubt, as I already said. And I do want to point again to the doubt playlist, and that is on the screen right now. To everyone, We should examine the reasons we believe what we do, no matter what they are, no matter what worldview you currently find yourself in. I would challenge you to examine the reasons that you hold those beliefs.
Taking it apart piece by piece to see what's really there.
Next, I would say that we should remain open-minded to the evidence, and we should go where the evidence leads. We should not be scared of truth, as it is our cornerstone. We should expect our theology to get messy at times, but we should rest in our relationship with Jesus. Lastly, let me be part of your process. I would love to hear a piece of your story, no matter where you're at on this journey. Please consider emailing me at timhallcoaching@outlook.com. Also, consider joining the Dealing with Deconstruction Facebook group. Well, that's all I have for today, and as I end every episode, I challenge you to doubt towards faith.